Okay, I think that we are definitely better now. It's not doing this weird delay thing. I rebooted. Sorry, thank you for bearing with me during that last time, everyone that did. And I know that's annoying when people aren't prepared. I try to be as prepared as I can, but I'm working on it. I'm working on it. Jesus help us. We wait for a couple of people to get back in here. If anybody comes back, I'll just have a drink and sip and get my place ready here because this is going to be good. I think I'm hooked already. Okay, so thank you anyone for coming back. I do definitely appreciate it. I think that this is better, and I think that you guys can hear me better, see me better. Hopefully, my voice matches my lips now. Again, sorry if you hear background noise. We here at Red Flags do not have a budget despite income from selling babies or anything like that for a private soundproof studio. So my dogs do not mind me, nor does my husband sometimes. So you may hear your dogs or husband or something like that in the background. But hopefully we'll deal with it. We got rebooted. We got up. I appreciate anyone that's coming back in. So get your Tito's ready. I've got mine right here, so I don't even have to get up to get a refill. So what we're going to cover is there is a documentary. You can watch it on A&E or on Peacock, and it's called The Secrets of Playboy. It came out earlier this year, and I had not yet watched it. And I was listening to Juicy Scoop with Heather McDonald the other day. It's a podcast I listen to frequently. I like her a lot, actually. I've actually met her, and I've actually corresponded with her staff at one point, and very nice, very funny lady. And she was interviewing two of the girls. If you guys remember the show, The Girls Next Door, about Hefner and his girlfriends, it was Holly, Bridget, and Kendra. And Holly was like the main one, and Bridget and Kendra were, they were there too, but they weren't the. Holly was like the main girlfriend that her storyline on the show was that she wanted to get married and all that stuff. And they were all young blondes, kind of looked alike. So they were telling about things kind of that happened behind the scenes that we didn't know. So my impression of Hugh Hefner, and I don't know if anyone else had this impression, was that he was, if you were in Playboy, it was kind of almost a status symbol. Like a lot of celebrities were in Playboy. It wasn't considered, skanky or something like that. It was kind of the first magazine of its time. It started in 1953, according to this documentary. There's not a whole lot of background on how it started. And again, if I ignore your comments or something like that, I'm trying to stay on topic. And if there's something we need to pause to discuss, we will. So it started in 1953, apparently just Hugh Hefner and a typewriter. And he made 50,000 copies of this magazine, Playboy, and somehow it hasn't covered this in the documentary, and I haven't researched this yet. There's a couple of things, because the documentary is 12 episodes. So there's a couple of things that I kind of want to, if the documentary doesn't circle back to, I'd like to cover on my own. Somehow he gets Marilyn Monroe on the cover of the magazine and to be in the magazine. So all 50,000 copies sell. Playboy's a hit. So, and again, my impression of him, you saw a lot of celebrities hanging out at the Playboy Mansion, like parties and things like that, and all of the girls seemed very glamorous. It seemed like a very glamorous lifestyle. And I don't recall ever hearing, I can also remember my dad had a subscription to Playboy, and I can remember when it used to come in the mail, and it would have like the big black cover over it, so you couldn't see, and I would just wonder what was in there. And it wasn't like you got a bad, Marilyn Monroe was on the first issue, Pamela Anderson, Jenny McCarthy, lots of people that I can't think of. Pamela Anderson, if I'm not mistaken, it kind of launched her career. She was, and I could have the details of this wrong, but I know she got discovered at some sort of, yeah, it was glamorous, Maria. she got discovered she was at a ball game and she got on the Jumbotron, and then she got discovered because she was gorgeous, and then she was in Playboy, and the rest worked out pretty well for her. So, Anna Nicole Smith was in it, and Anna Nicole Smith was gorgeous. And it was kind of the first magazine of its time. It wasn't just, it was, I guess people would say, tasteful nudes, or if there is, it was for the purpose, it was a sex product, but it also did have interviews with celebrities, things about political topics, things like that. And then Hugh Hefner became kind of an entity in itself. He would show up with 6 girls dressed in bunny outfits and go to the most glamorous clubs. And, no one really, Hugh Hefner was kind of considered a class act, and nobody really, while he was alive, has said anything to the contrary. It was always, kind of an honor to be invited to, I don't know, an honor, but kind of prestigious to be invited to the mansion, or to, come over and sit with him at the club, whatever. So we start out this documentary, and I'm going to have it on in the background here on low so that I can cheat. And we see Holly Madison, and then we see a couple other ladies. A couple of them are a little older, and than Holly. And then, we're assuming, we don't really know. They're making just kind of some vague statements. We don't totally know who they are. It was my assumption at first that they were all former Playboy bunnies. Well, I was wrong, and this is where I got hooked. So it shows the news broadcast of where it was announced that he died, and he died at 91 and had this whole empire. And there's a lot of shots of him from the 70s just surrounded by women. And just looking very glamorous. All the women look very happy. He's got, the 70s shirts on, and just women everywhere. They're having a good time. Looks very glamorous. So then this other blonde chick comes on the screen, and I'm like, oh, she's probably a former Playboy bunny, or whatever, former girlfriend. No, she is the daughter, apparently, and I'm not sure exactly what year it was. I may have missed that, but she is the daughter of the doctor that lived in the Playboy, he lived in the Playboy mansion, and so did she. At like the age of 10, she grew up in the Playboy mansion. So already I'm grabbing my Tito's. Like, can you imagine being a child in the freaking Playboy mansion? I mean, my God. So, let me see, like I said, I'm cheating, and I have it on in the background. And so she's saying kind of that there was some kind of criticism about whether or not Hugh Hefner was a feminist or exploiting women. And if it had happened the way that I thought it happened, I'm kind of the opinion that you use what talents you have, what gifts you've been given, and as long as you're not hurting anybody and you make your own livelihood. If I was born looking like Tyra Banks, I'd be walking a runway. If I was born looking like Pamela Anderson, I'm not saying I would have turned down Playboy either. So as long as you're not hurting someone, as long as you're being safe, not breaking the law, things like that, then Secret Treasures, tell them to come in here. This is a good one, and I'd like to really discuss this, and I'd like to actually try doing some non-YouTube ball content for a change, and I expect there to be some low numbers for that at first, because it's kind of a new thing, but I think it'll be fun, and I would love to talk about this with anyone, because this is like, it's fascinating to me. So the girl, her name is, what is her name? I just saw it. And it's important because this, I don't know if all of them are going to be. Jennifer Saganor is her name. I don't know if all of the documentaries are going to be from her point of view. Again, she is the child of the doctor that Yes, Fancy Feast. Yes. Hold up, no spoilers because I've only seen season one, and I don't think it's going to take 12 weeks to cover this because I plan on watching several episodes tonight. So, she again, she's the daughter of the doctor who was assigned at the Playboy Mansion, and it's kind of unclear what kind of doctor he was. I don't know if he was no Fancy Feast. Thank you. I can't wait. So I don't know if it's kind of unclear what kind of doctor he was. If he was like a plastic surgeon or if he was, there in case there were some, just a general physician. And there was a lot of staff on call in the Playboy Mansion. So this girl, Jennifer, I want to pronounce her last name correctly because she's written a book about this too. Jennifer Saganor is the child of the doctor who lives there, and they move in, and she's grown up at the Playboy Mansion. And it first kind of starts out with talking about Hugh Hefner and what people thought of him. And most people are kind of saying he was a businessman. And then this one very glamorous Jackie Collins looking lady comes on. Oh my gosh. I don't know if I'm allowed to turn the camera around so you can see her, but I hope I look like her, but she could be 25 or 85. You can't tell. She reminds me of someone that would be on like Designing Women or something, or that would like slap the hell out of somebody in a Jackie Collins movie. But she looks fantastic, and everyone's saying he was a businessman, he was an entrepreneur. She comes on here, pursed lips, made up to the tens, and says he was a monster. So again, I get my drink, and then there's another blonde talk. There, people are all saying some things about him. So it kind of talks about how he was in the war, and again, it doesn't do a lot of background on how Playboy came to be, except that he came back from the war in 1953, so that would have been World War II, and he sat down at a typewriter and typed up this magazine and got Marilyn Monroe somehow to be on the cover and in the magazine, and then boom, the Playboy empire was made. And it was not just a magazine, it was a whole brand lifestyle. And no one really said anything about the parties that went on there or anything. You never really heard a lot about them. You just kind of wanted to, I would have wanted to go to one. Who doesn't want to see what's in there? And everyone looks like they're having a great time. And then this lady is on here saying that now she is glad that women are looking back at their experience that they had there and kind of retelling their story from a different perspective, because it was not the way that it was portrayed to be. It was quite different. And so we get back to Jennifer, the doctor's daughter who lived in the mansion, and she's in her apartment, and I still at this point in the documentary, when I was just watching it myself, I thought that she was a former playmate. She looks great. And she tells us who she is and that she grew up there, and that, she all around the Playboy bunnies all the time. Like, that was her. She wrote, the book is called Playground, A Childhood Lost in the Playboy Mansion. So she has said, and the girl said too, that it took them a long time after leaving the mansion. The girls I'm talking about on Heather McDonald's podcast said that it took them a long time after leaving the mansion to really kind of reflect on how fucked up things were. I don't know if I have to say this. All of this is allegedly and in my opinion. So when you're in this inner circle of Hugh Hefner's, it was very, it was kind of sacred. There, in this documentary, they kind of compare it to a cult later on, and that it was just a very weird place, that there was, the whole staff, it was like, it kind of makes me think about what, in a different way, obviously. Hi, honey wig. Obviously, but kind of makes me think of Neverland. Like it was kind of this not theme park as far as rides and stuff, but just this like Disneyland where you could come do whatever. And there was, Hugh Hefner was the king, and if he wanted it to snow in July, somebody would make it snow or whatever. It reminds me of like Michael Jackson and Neverland a little bit. And she's saying, when she was 9 is when they started living there. And her father was Hugh Hefner's best friend and doctor, and her father had his own room and she had his own room. So and I would like to know also more about like where this mansion came from, like when he got the mansion, because the house, I mean, I've seen pictures of it before and stuff, but it's unbelievable. Yeah, everyone was afraid of him, and the staff had very particular rules, kind of like a be seen and not heard. They were told, you work for Hugh Hefner, you don't work for the girls. They have, I think, a former butler that's on later, and they're showing like old. It looks like these were taken maybe in the late 70s or something. Pictures of her wandering around, and there's a zoo on the mansion, and the Playboy bunnies are kind of taking care of her. You can find the documentary on Peacock or on A&E is where I'm watching it. And that she had a really good time at first because they're all kind of wandering around. It's like videos of them roller skating on the tennis court with her, and she thought that they were just that it was just a great thing, and they would always hang out by the pool all the time and stuff like that. And then when she got older, she kind of started sneaking out of her room and watching things that were going on. But yeah, it might be on the YouTube channel. So he would have these extravagant Christmas parties with Frank Sinatra and just everything, and it was like a really extravagant lifestyle. And to be put in it at 9 years old and have Playboy bunnies watching you and this kind of lifestyle would just have been unreal. And so she says, and I guess even back then, like we saw in The Girls Next Door, he would have several girlfriends at one time, and one would kind of be the main girlfriend. And she recalls that it's showing now and I've watched this already. I've watched it twice. I just wanted to make sure I didn't leave out anything. It's showing Hugh Hefner giving some interviews like in the 70s. And he composes himself very well. He's described as classy. He keeps himself very composed and kind of just has a very, very close inner circle. Oh, so in 1971, he bought the house and he moved in 1975. There you go. There's the history of the mansion. And he makes this whole lifestyle about how, it was an unwritten rule there that you come in there to have a good time. Like, you don't cry inside the mansion gates. It's only fun in here. So he has the girlfriends, and this one guy comes on here and describes a fountain outside the front, y'all. And I don't know if it would have occurred to me if he hadn't said it, but it does kind of look like a dolphin molesting a child. It's a really weird fountain. So anyway, it's a really weird fountain. So, and it's a gorgeous house. I'm sure probably one of his kids owns it now, but it was just whatever you wanted to do. And so the business of it. So when we get back to Jennifer, she talks about how the men and the women that were on the staff were treated very differently. Like the women, unless it was party time or whatever, they were not allowed to be in the same room with the men talking business. And she can remember her father, but she was allowed, since she was a child, she was allowed to be in there with her father, just sitting with him. And him watching her, and they would start to get to a point where they would show her, at this point she's maybe like 12 or something. They would show her pictures of the girls and ask her like, hey, what looks like it needs to be done here? And she would be able to say, well, that one needs breast implants, that one should be smaller, fix that one's nose, whatever, which is unreal. And if you can imagine, like, I don't know a lot of women that don't struggle with body issues, and especially at that age. I found a picture of myself when I was like, I don't know, between 17 and 19 the other day, and I thought I was so fat, and I was tiny. And so if you can imagine being a teenage girl in that environment, like that had to have been insane. So now looking back at it, Mickey Garcia, this is the woman that looks like a character in a Jackie Collins novel. She looks flawless. She was a former Playmate in 1973. She was Miss January, looked stunning. And she was the head of promotions at Playboy from 1973 to 1982. And obviously, something happened in between that time. So she's kind of reflecting back on her experience, and talking about the extravagant parties, the roller skating again, and people, big stars coming over just to play tennis and in the fountain. And then there's a guy that's kind of dressed up like Hugh Hefner. It's not someone I've ever heard of, but it says it's one of his friends, and he literally has on like a purple velvet suit like Hugh Hefner wore. He says they don't understand what I call the innocent times. And the doctor, I mean, they're still talking about the parties, and they look, I mean, it's just beautiful girls running around doing whatever you want. And she says she remembers as a child feeling like these women were feeling not constricted by society, that they were free to be whoever that they wanted to be, that they could, felt great walking around naked, felt great walking around in swimsuits, that it was liberating for them, that it was, it was a feminist thing almost, because that was the perception that she got, because that was the perception that he molded. They're just, someone just called it on here a Disneyland for adults. And there's just all kinds of pictures of girls in the bunny outfits. So there must be 50 sitting around him in this scene right now. And in every picture, he's just draped with women. So a guy that used to be his butler says that he didn't even want to know, Hugh Hefner didn't even want to know the names of the staff, that they were just his servants, and that they weren't supposed to pay attention to anyone else. No one else existed, and that was just Hugh Hefner's rule there. And he had a thing for Pepsi, apparently, that he drank about 40 Pepsis a day. That's a lot of freaking Pepsi. And they had to bring him Pepsi in a special napkin, and 2 or 3 pounds of M&Ms a day. That's a lot of M&Ms. And he had like a revolving bed, and oh my gosh, this one guy counted. There were 150 rules that they had to follow exactly. And they were told that they could not talk to any of the girls, and that they were not friends with the girls. You don't work for the girls, you work for Mr. Hefner. So they were told, kind of be seen, not heard. I mean, he created his own little kingdom. Not little, it was a huge kingdom. And it's really hard to get a sense of what his personality was, because he just seems very, almost like a politician, kind of like he always says the right thing, or always, he never fumbles on his words. He never really looks like he's uncomfortable or unconfident with anything, and there weren't a lot of doors that he couldn't open for people, and really built it up. So I'm going to fast forward a little bit because this is just saying the same thing I've been saying. But the things started to get weird. Well, things that got weird, for several reasons. The 150 rules, all of that stuff. The kingdom kind of he built up. It was, the brand. It was, and it was a genius marketing idea. It wasn't just a magazine, and it wasn't like you got caught being in some dirty porn or something. It was considered very, like Maria said, kind of classy. And so he had this kind of feeling like he's seen on one interview saying that you can have true love with many different people, and that it can be a beautiful thing, that there should be more love in the world, and that's what he wanted. Well, in the 1970s, he started, the women lib movement kind of came into play. Oh, before that, I'm sorry, let me back up. I believe it was 1959, it was somewhere in the 50s, where there were Jim Crow laws in place, like the separate but equal bullshit. And he was one of the first major celebrities. Apparently, he had a show about the Playboy Club or something. And at that time, even unfortunately, if a black entertainer was entertaining at a club, they had to come in through the back and could not be seen socializing. But everyone does say in this documentary that he was kind of groundbreaking for racial equality. Like on his show, he would have Sammy Davis Jr., whoever, people of all types of color in his club, and treating them with respect, and that was not a factor for him, which was a great thing. He even got, I believe, nominated to host something with the NAACP, or I know he got some kind of honor from them at some point. So everyone did say that about him that was really positive. But one thing, y'all should listen to the Heather McDonald podcast. One thing that she does say is that, your experience with someone, and this is a great way to look at it, not everyone has the same experience with people, that there are a lot of people that probably, you can probably talk to a lot of waiters and busboys who will tell you O.J. Simpson was a fantastic guy, but that doesn't mean everyone had that experience with him. And obviously that's, it's probably the case for everyone in the world, actually, if you think about it, because there's some people that have probably had some really bad experiences with me, and some people that have had some good ones. So, but when you're larger than life like that, kind of like, poor mean Ellen, who created a persona out of being the nicest person in the world when apparently she's very mean, exchanges that you have with people are more memorable. Anyway, I digress. So, and it was also, I wish they would delve into a little bit more how he had the connections when he first started the magazine to get Marilyn Monroe on the cover and to get her in to pose for the magazine, because that's, I would think, would be a pretty big connect to make. Oh, he was honorary chairman of the NAACP awards, is what it was. And that he set this very equal atmosphere from everyone, where black people and white people could mingle inside his club, and he was kind of the only person doing that at the time, which was great. And that message was throughout the whole mansion. There's a black Playboy bunny from, I believe she was a Playboy bunny in the 60s, which was kind of, still 60s, not a great time period for black people, as far as equality wise and being equal, and that she loved being there, and that she made a lot of money being a Playboy bunny and working at the club, and that she had a very good life. So where it starts to get a little weirder is when the doctor's kid that's living in the mansion, Jennifer, starts sneaking out of her bedroom and looking in bedrooms and stuff, and start seeing women down on all fours, and and doing some crazy stuff, and snorting things, taking pills. They mentioned on Holly or Bridget on the Heather McDonald podcast. This is not an advertisement for Juicy Scoop, and I don't know if she would appreciate my endorsement. But it was really interesting because one of either Holly or Bridget said that they were offered a Quaalude, and that was, I guess they probably came around in the 90s, and Quaaludes stopped being produced. I believe it was late. It was in the 70s at the very latest, early 80s, and so if you have some Quaaludes, you have some connections. Holler up. I'm just kidding. But I mean, it was, who can get their hands on freaking Quaaludes? Like, um, that's insane. So she starts looking in bedroom doors and sees just a lot of things going on that she starts to question. And she said she can remember thinking, my God, this doesn't seem. She didn't have. She would see them in these beautiful gowns, like crawling across the floor, and then basically having sex with a lot of dudes and doing a lot of drugs and being degraded. And she can remember thinking, I don't want to be like that. So she starts to grow up inside this mansion, and as she's growing up, we get to like the 1970s, and where the women's lib movement goes starts, in full effect, and they're not super happy with Playboy magazine. There's a lot of people that are protesting. They're protesting the magazine. They're protesting him. He's always very well spoken. He goes on this talk show where there's a feminist there saying that Hugh Hefner is the enemy, and he said that even nice girls like sex. He treats all the girls the same, and she's like, I'm a 35-year-old woman. I don't appreciate being called girl, but if I would call you boy, and he just kind of laughs and says, point taken. And, again, just this kind of thing about feminism, that it's okay for a woman to be proud of her body and to show it off. And I agree with that. And I agree with that if you're not being taken advantage of, or what it appears happened here. It's a good theory that, in a good image that he put out there. And there was a woman saying, they show her protesting and saying that it's sad that you can make more money posing for Playboy than from being a teacher. And I guess that is sad. But again, I do think that using your gifts, if they're available to you and it's legal and you're not hurting anybody or yourself to make money, then that's okay. If I was born looking like Tyra Banks, I would definitely pose in lingerie. If you're born a genius, then invent something incredible. You all have to use, why, if there's something that can make, if you can use your God-given abilities or gifts or whatever you have been blessed with to make a livelihood for yourself, and you're happy with the way you're doing that, then by all means do that. We kind of all do that, don't we? Do it anyway. And so, and some people do have a moral objection to nudity, and there's the whole objectifying the female body, that argument. But pornography is not illegal, and Playboy magazine was not illegal, and if anyway, so these girls chose to do that, and that was their right to do that. But it made a lot of people mad in the 1970s. And this was also before, and I think this is only coming out now because we have, the Me Too movement and everything. And Hugh Hefner died really before all that happened, before Harvey Weinstein, before, Bill Cosby, Harvey Weinstein, all that. They were still alive when people started speaking up. Hugh Hefner was not. So, I mean, that is just what it is. And this is where they're still protesting, and he is very cool on the talk shows and handles himself very well. Some of the women are getting very upset, and he's he's just very much composing himself. He's not ranting. He's having an intelligent discussion. He's listening to what they say, and just having a disagreement respectfully. And so then Miss Diana, oh yeah, Bill Cosby was there a lot. So then the lady that looks, God, she looked fabulous when she was younger too. The lady that looks like she stepped out of the Jackie Collins novel is back, and she's showing her Miss January 1973 photos, which were fantastic. She still looks fantastic. And talking about her career there and how at that point in time she wasn't interested in the typical marriage thing and everything. She wanted to have a career. My BFF and I were, oh, you were invited there once, but we thought he was icky. He had his security ask us. We said, tell Hugh to ask us himself. He did not. Wonder if Heidi Fleiss knew of any first-hand encounter. We might get to that later. I don't know. So they're showing in 1967. That's when Bunny Jackie was the black Playboy bunny. She was a Playboy bunny for 11 and a half years, lived the way she wanted to, got paid well, and would have rather done that than become a secretary and struggle that way. And let's see. So then this is where it gets real weird. So, and we'll kind of wrap up here on this note because it's already getting a little weird. So I'm already super into it. So the doctor, she stopped saying the doctor's daughter, comes back in here, and she is Jennifer Segnor. Again, I'm trying very hard not to mispronounce her last name. She comes back in and is talking about when she was about 15. She kind of drops this bombshell on us. She fell in love with Hugh Hefner's main girlfriend. And it's kind of like a, I'm sorry, what moment? Like, I rewound it. Like, what did she say? So she calls this woman Kendall. She doesn't give us her real name. And she says that she fell in love with his main girlfriend and that they would kind of sneak around and see each other. She was 15 at the time. And that they would have encounters, and that there's a guy named Mitch that was one of the butlers who would bring them up daiquiris in bed. And she, oh, sorry guys, before this, she said that this was kind of a known thing about Hugh Hefner. It's not something I knew, but that's so crazy. I'm going to have to, Knickerbocker Amber, that you were invited to the Playboy Mansion. That's insane. I would love to hear more about that. DM me. But so she talks about how he kissed people on the mouth, kind of like with an open mouth, even her being a teen or a preteen, and that it was just kind of icky. And she mentioned something to her father, I guess, about it. And he said, well, that's just how people show love. Okay. So anyway, she, at 15, falls in love with Hugh Hefner's main girlfriend, and they sneak around and have rendezvous in the mansion. And then everybody kind of knew, because Hugh Hefner knew about it. He just didn't want it to get out because she was underage. Her father knew about it. The staff knew about it because, oh my God, guys, all the rooms were bugged. There was the security guys wore body cams and audio devices. They were, all the rooms were bugged. There was no privacy. And so there wasn't a way to hide anything from him. And she said that one night that, again, she's 15, that the woman she's calling Kendall came down to her room and said, Hef said the only way that we can be together tonight is if we're together in the bedroom with him. And so she's not exactly sure what's going on. And she had thought of Hugh Hefner kind of like an uncle until this point. So she she goes into the room, and she's with Kendall and Hugh Hefner, and oh, she said another one of his girlfriends led her up there and said, "Hey, you know that you don't have to do anything that you don't want to do." And she was like, "Okay," and really wasn't sure at what they were getting at, I guess. And so she said she thought it was okay for a minute. They sat down on the bed or whatever, and then the tone kind of changed, and she started sobbing. And I think she may have even gotten sick. And that this guy she had looked at like an uncle, it was obviously a very sexual moment, and that's when things changed, obviously. And then we don't really hear a lot more about it other than people just saying like what happened next. I don't know if it's necessarily to her, or that as the years went on, the story gets even juicier and more salacious. So I'm going to wrap up here, and thank you guys for bearing with me at the beginning and for listening to this. This is my first time recapping something like this, so I hope it gets you guys interested in it. We said 12 weeks. It's not going to take me 12 weeks to watch this because I'm going to dive in more of it tonight. But please, I would love for someone to discuss it with me if you want to watch it and come up here and talk about it. It's just a really eye-opening story, and I don't even know all of it yet. I would definitely encourage you to listen to that Juicy Scoop interview. They talk about how they had to go in one after another and have sex with him when he was like 75 years old, and that he ruined the book launch that she had done, squelch publicity of her. They do go into that, yeah. Because I thought, I don't know, there's something I was going to say, but I'll say for later because I don't know if it's going to pan out. But yeah, he did. She wrote the book before he died, and it was not well received. So, and Hugh Hefner had something to do with that. So anyway, I really want to see the rest of this. Oh, Holly and Bridget, they talk about how, that they did actually have to have sex with Hugh Hefner, and that they would go in one after another, and that you kind of wanted to be the first one because there were no condoms involved. And they get kind of explicit about it. It's a really good interview. I hope that we can really, I don't know, I'm going to watch some more episodes. We can get into it a little bit more, and maybe some other stuff. I don't know. But thank you guys so much. I will try to have my crap together next time and not have to log on and back off because my stuff's not working. Again, you can watch this. It's 12 episodes on A&E or on Peacock. Thank you, moderators, for coming in and keeping law and order. Thank you, everyone, for watching and participating. And as always, thank you forever caring about what I have to say, because it is really, that does mean a lot to me that anyone gives a shit what I have to say about anything. So anyway, you guys have a great night, and I hope I will see you soon. Bye.